Hello, listeners. Welcome back as we are dropping another episode in our series sponsored by our good friends at Railsware. Railsware is a leading product studio with two main focuses, services and products. They have created amazing products like Mailtrap, Coupler, and Titan apps, while also partnering with teams like Calendly and BrightBytes. They deliver amazing products and have happy customers to prove it. In this series, we are digging into the company's methods around product engineering and development. In particular, we will cover relevant topics to not only highlight their expertise, but to educate you on industry trends alongside their experience. In today's episode, we are talking again with Serhiy Korolyov, Co-CEO of Railsware and co-founder of Mailtrap. In my conversation with Serhiy today, we dive into how Railsware delivers value, not just features, by following their Bridges framework, enabling their team to focus on value delivery. Serhiy, welcome back to the show for episode 2. Really excited to dive into our topic today around value, not features, and how Railsware approaches its product development cycle. So, Serhiy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for inviting me for this second part. Glad to share my experience and the experience of our company here.
Absolutely, which has been vast. Railsware has built some amazing products, Mailtrap, Coupler, Titan apps, you name it, and have been involved in building some big names like Calendly. So let's dive into it. Railsware, they're proud of your product development approaches, and you guys build amazing things, and it works. So let's pave the way to our topic today through one of your prominent cases, and then that's Calendly. So in their early days, Calendly reached out to you to deliver their product, right? They had a tight budget, large set of requirements. That sounds familiar. Several of those initial expected features remained unfulfilled, and that leads me to the first question that I want to dive into here. To you, what's the difference between shipping features and delivering value? Those are two separate things, and even saying them out loud, I have a visceral response to that. But I'm curious, what's the difference there, and why do so many product teams get this wrong?
So this is a very good question, and it's a fundamental question in software development. So people used to think about problems in terms of solutions, and they then actually express their wishes pretty often or what they want to achieve through the solution. So let's say they usually don't say that I am thirsty, right? I want to drink something. They would rather say I want Coca-Cola or I want an orange juice. But maybe in the fridge there are other options which you can think of, like you just see the only one which is like stays on the table, but there are a bunch of others behind the table or in the fridge. And this is something that happens in software development as well. You yourself trap into the situation again and again. Then you want to say, hey team, let's build this feature. But in fact, you need to make a step back and consider about the motivational part. So we have this amazing framework Bridges, which has been inspired by Pivotal Labs' Inception process, which also took the roots from some other processes of IDEO, I believe. So the goal of this framework is to separate the motivation, the problematic part, the problem part, and the solution part. So you describe the subjects who participate in that system, and you describe their goals, their issues, their benefits, and then you focus on prioritizing them. And based on those priorities, you already start to think about solutions. You may feel that it's more complicated to just start to talk about features and shuffle features in the list. But in fact, it is much, much more important because features looks nice. And there is always this feeling that if we will deliver this feature and that feature, the product going to be very good. And when it's going to be good, then we will make a great business out of it. But in fact, you need to find like the most challenging part in the software business, in SaaS business or like software product business, is to satisfy the need of a specific customer. So there is a ideal customer profile that you have as a business, and then they have some needs. So they may have some issues, they may have some risks. And if you satisfy those risks with your solution, then you have a big chance to succeed with your application.
I want to dig into more of the Bridges framework here in a second, but I want to define what is value, right? Like you've been working with several client products and then also Railsware built its own products. How do you define or identify what value is, and what does it actually mean for different stakeholders? You mentioned features and problems and solutions and how you use the bridges framework. But within that, how do you identify what the value is?
The value is that you give something to the user that bring them to the better state. They cover their problem, they cover their risk again, or they get some benefit, right? So if you sell chocolate, you do not cover like any issue of the customer or risk, but you deliver benefit. So you deliver sugar into the blood and their brain is happy. So that's the value, right? So the value in chocolate that you get more sugar in your blood. And that's fantastic. If you think about insurance business, then the value of insurance is actually to cover risks. So you have risk to damage your car, or you potentially have issues with your health or with the house. You cover those risks. So there is a risk of damaging car, and solution for this is purchasing insurance with the certain percentage of the cost of the car. And this is value for you. So you consider it as the good option to share this risk with other company, which knows how to manage it better than you do. So similar things happen with Calendly, right? So there was this, probably people already who use right now scheduling do not remember, but we're old school guys. We remember that when you want to schedule a meeting with someone, you say, hey, let's talk on Wednesday or Friday at 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. And then and the colleague replies to you, I can do Thursday, 8 p.m. And then in parallel, you have 10 conversations and then they match each other. And then when you agreed on certain time with somebody, then you receive another email from the other person that tells you that he also wants to join, not to join, but to book a meeting at that moment, at that time slot that you already booked. And you have this mass sending messages back and forth. So that was the issue, right? It was an inefficient way of scheduling your calls. And if you take a team scheduling, when you have 2, 3, 4 people involved into the call, this is the madness. You need to keep some slots and not prepared for the calls, but never book them because they might be overbooked and so on. So it's very complicated. And then simple solution, it popped up, right? You have a link. It is a public wrapper to what you have in your Google Calendar. And that's it. You just send the link. The person comes and chooses the best slot for themselves. And multiple people can do this in parallel and the system handles that. So that's the value. The value not to spend too much time scheduling events or calls for team members.
So it feels like identifying the first principles of what you want to achieve with that particular product, right? You're always referring to this is the value. This is what we're focusing on delivering. If we are doing something or proposing to build something, we're looking at it through this lens of what the value is. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah. And what is the value? It should be promoted in the feature list on the very top. So there is this core value that you deliver with software, but then there is a lot of wrapper features which you need to deliver. Let's say you need sign up, you need forgot password, you need pricing page, you need a bunch of other things. But that's already add-ons. So this is something that does not deliver a specific value. This is something that mostly any SaaS applications have, right? And when you deliver software, especially if it's a first version, it is very important to focus on this value. And what we always see in consultancy business is that customers come to us with very detailed screens where they have 10th of different screens with sign in, sign up flow, wizards, and so on. But then when you talk about the actual software, actual value they want to deliver and actual details of their core business, then it's get messy. So it's usually absolutely, it's covered by 10 or 5% with the screens, and the rest they don't even know how to do, or they don't think about how to do. So to cover all those edge cases, because it's easier to start with, okay, so we have a homepage, we have sign in, sign up, we have forgot password. Then you come in and then you have some wizard and then you have enough homepage. And then you have settings, pricing, and so on. It's easy, and people used to think in those categories, first of all, rather than focus on the value. Okay, so we need to deliver, let's stick with events. So we need to be able to set up an event of the different type and create a public link that you can send later. And everything, and this is something that should be done first of all, even like with some simple wrapper around. So without pricing, without settings, very simple. But the first link can be sent, like should be sent as fast as possible.
Good stuff. Okay, let's flip back to Bridges then. So you walked us through Bridges and what its goal, what its aim is, and it's a useful tool to make sure the team is on the same page and to set the product process straight. How does Bridges help the team focus on the value delivery as we just defined it and talked through it? Walk us through that process.
So Bridges stands for benefits, risks, issues, goals, and domain knowledge and the solutions. The framework popped up from the software development, but it is a versatile framework that can be used across the board. And for example, our head of HR, they usually make some very nice presentations for the HR community here in Europe, actually showing how Bridges is applicable for HR processes. Getting back to the framework itself. So you have those subjects, and I want to give you an example. So if we will get back in time when the Uber wasn't created, so what users can see is that there are a few subjects. So there is a driver, there is a passenger, and there is a system kind of call center before, but actually Uber system was a replacement of that, right? The driver wanted to get those rides with the best possible fare, not fair, but it was the best price for them. The client, they prefer to have some visibility who will come to them. So they want to have some trust. They want easiness of the picking a car. They want flawless experience of getting out of the car without sitting and touching those touch screens, trying to pick the tips, how much they should pay and so on. That was complicated process. So you need to call to the taxi service and then they explain where you are, on which street, where do you stay. So we already forgot it, right? But it was also a pretty tough experience. And so back then you would describe that there is a passenger and it has issues to explicitly state their location. So to choose service to call to have a prediction how much money it will cost for them to go from A to B, and so on and so on. So you explain, and everything that I'm just saying, you put with the separate cards on the board. So you don't talk about features yet, right? So because those benefits and issues, they can be achieved. So issues can be solved with the different methods. But at this specific point, which is important, is to focus on the thinking about problems, not trying to how I will resolve it. So you think, okay, so that's the problem. And how big this problem is, put the priority, let's say from 1 to 4. And like 1 is the most priority thing, 4 is less priority thing. And Bridges framework helps you to focus on the problem side and prioritize the problem side. So you prioritize problems first of all. And then when you go to the solution space, you start to consider what are the options, how to cover all those problems and benefits that you have on your left side of the board. And priorities on that left side of the board helps you to understand how to prioritize the solution itself. This separation is very important, this problem space and solution space, and helping team focusing on problem space gives you a possibility not to mix all those solutions into some big list of features, which are hard to prioritize, which is more important, which is less important.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. And what I hear you talking about when you're defining the problem and then defining what could be the solutions and keeping those things separate, the role of user research and validation seems really important. How would you define that? Like user research, validation, you're validating the problem. How does that play into the Bridges approach? It seems like it's a cornerstone of the problem definition, but I'm curious what you have to say.
So you need some input in the beginning for your problem space. So not something that you imagine during the session yourself, but you definitely do some research before, or your team does the research before. Like any participant who is interested in the results, they have a bunch of the materials which will be introduced during the problem space discussion. And it's not necessarily a process for starting new product. It's any any restart of something or development of the new big feature, a more complicated feature, it will be helpful. So let's say we start an AI direction in Coupler. So when we start AI direction in Coupler, we do a bunch of activities before we start even making decision. So we collect the user analytics. So how features are used, what customers do with the product, what are the expectations. So we launch a bunch of surveys with the existing customers, collecting their feedback and creating the potential list of, again, values that we can deliver and problems that they want to resolve. So we go to the conferences. There are smaller conferences here in Europe and in the United States as well, actually. So Measure Camp, it's one-day conferences in different cities. So we went to a few cities and talked. So there is a proper audience there. So we talked to them. We made the presentation of something that even didn't exist and collect some feedback. So this is type of information which we take as an input into the problem space. It helps us to prioritize those cards. And for instance, what we have found out is that for data analytics community, it is an issue or a potential risk that they don't know what AI is going to do with their data. So if AI is going to use their data to educate their models. And okay, so that's the problem that they stated, right? The other problem that they stated, they cannot rely on the results that is provided by AI and some other problems that they have stated. So they did experiments. They stated there are the problems. And so it's actually a highlight for us that, okay, we need to address those problems and those issues. And when we will deliver a solution, there must be, so those problems must be covered somehow. It must be proper communication or it must be done with the solution itself. So in our case, it was a combination of both.
Thanks for walking through that. I think that makes sense. So with Bridges, obviously it helps to keep the team aligned on the same page, focused on the problem, the solution, the value, all those things. Can you share maybe a story around where Bridges helped the team pivot from building the wrong features to delivering real value? So you already started down a path, you're building the wrong thing, but then you got to shift. Tell me maybe some stories there.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, if I have such story. I must honestly say that when we start something, we are quite open for different type of directions where we can go. So there is a potential direction, but we like the other approach, which we call, it is like a famous diverge converge. So when on the first stage of this process, you create opportunities and then on the diverge stage, you choose the best one. So I wouldn't say that Bridges any time helped us to switch completely the direction, but it is a tool that we constantly use to validate what we have already now. And so review the strategy, the product strategy, the marketing strategy, the set of processes that we have. Even there is a task to create a bunch of the agreements for certain project. So that Bridges can help us to properly prioritize the cases that we want to cover. But again, getting back to the shifting the direction, actually in 2024, when we were analyzing our marketing strategy in Coupler and marketing strategy in Mailshop, we used Bridges for that purpose. So deeply expressing like what are the issues we have right now, what are the issues our customers have right now, and what are the goals, what we want to achieve. And Bridges just helps to properly assess the resources that we have and the opportunities that we can handle. Because when you don't have Bridges, you just have some feelings that, okay, I need to go this way or that way. I need to do influencers. I need to spend more money on paid ads. I need to do this and this. But when you put everything on the whiteboard with cards, and there is important card, which has named domain knowledge. So when you have those conversations with the team and look on those cards, those inputs we discussed before, which you bring, they usually go into those knowledge cards. And you have a feeling that, okay, if we will improve this page, then things will go right. But then you look on the funnel and that the problem is not this page. The actual drop happens on the next stages. And so we better focus on the other things than just improving this page and making more modern or something, because sometimes there is a wishful thinking that, all right, if we will make this homepage looks more modern, we will redesign it, then our conversions will grow significantly. But then if you don't do preliminary analytics, or you have just beliefs and you don't have this rational thinking, then in many cases it ends up that you do the restructuring of the page, you do the redesign, nothing happens in the end. Because it was not the real issue. The issue was that value you delivered with the product was not enough for the customers to set up the flow or something. So that's the important part.
I'm curious about what would be the biggest challenge that teams face when transitioning from feature delivery, which I read that and I think about that and I think feature factory, right, to delivering value. I'm a team, I'm building software, I'm delivering features based on some requirements, but I'm not focused on value. What's the biggest challenge in that shift?
It's shift your comprehension of the process. So you need to shift the regular approach when you design and just explain features for your teammates or for yourself. So you need to start to think about values first, about the users, about their issues, about their risks. And then in an ideal world, you need to validate as much as possible. So not every product will allow you to validate your assumptions before you build them, but you should validate your assumptions about users and their pains and their kind of issues and their benefits they want to get. You need to validate them with the users first or potential users. And this is something that we practice in our product a lot. On Mailtrap, for instance, when we launched, or we were thinking about launching the sending part, because for many years, Mailtrap was just a testing tool. So we've launched a survey where we asked users their opinion, if it's something that is valuable for them or not. And so we've collected a bunch of valuable answers. So that was one first step. And we introduced sending. But then we were getting more and more feedbacks that, hey, you guys, you have transactional sending, but I don't want to purchase another tool for marketing or promo campaigns. So if I purchase one tool for emails, then I want to cover all my needs within one tool. Okay, got it. So the next step would be considering email marketing. And so instead of building it right away, we've put the menu item, email marketing, soon, and we've put the type form there with a bunch of questions. I was very surprised that during first few weeks, there were more than 300 answers for that questionnaire. We didn't have any prom emails, nothing. It was just a menu item, and users decided that it's important for them to share their opinion if they want to have email marketing, and what are the priorities of the features that they want to have.
That's fantastic. I love the Bridges framework, and I love that we walked through it today. It really helps teams focus on the problem, the solution, but most importantly, what value they are delivering to users. You have to validate your assumptions, validate your understanding through user research, and then focus hard on the quote-unquote first principles of delivering value, not features. And I think the stories you've illustrated and the things that we've walked through today really help to paint that picture. So, Serhiy, I appreciate you being on the show again and walking us through the Bridges framework.
Thank you, Noah. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys today.
Railsware's approach to products and engineering is gold, and the Bridges framework clearly helps their team focus on the problem, solution, and the value they are delivering. Serhiy very aptly points out that you have to validate assumptions, your understanding, and be thorough with your user research. Then, stick to first principles of delivering value. Thank you for listening today. If you would like to learn more about Railsware, please visit their website at railsware.com. That's RAILSWARE.com. And thanks again for listening.